Okay, welcome back. This tutorial is going to go over how to fire projectiles from a character in your game. If we look at the basic setup I've got here, so I've taken most of the advanced control code. So we've got a single sprite added to a sprite group. Plus I've got the movement controls in here as well, which is taken mostly from the advanced control system. So we've got the same triggers that we've used in that one. The only difference here is my game character actually has some methods now to move up, move down, move left, and move right. So when the move up is called, it moves the rectangle coordinate of the game character. So the situation we have now is I have a project like this. Okay. So we're going to implement now the idea of being able to fire. It comes still from a key press. So this time, rather than looking for a movement key, we're going to look for spacebar in my case. And then when that happens, I want to be able to call a method on the player to fire. Okay, so let's go across to the game character code. We're going to need to have a fire method. Now, just to test that this is working initially, let's just make sure everything's working okay. Okay, so if you watch in the bottom screen in the terminal area, as I move around and press spacebar. Okay, so great. So it's registering that a fire event needs to happen. This is taking place, but obviously it's not ideal. We want to be able to visually see something when this goes on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to need another class, that's going to represent our objects for the fire mechanism. So I'm going to go back up to my main folder, create a new Python file, and I'm going to call this bullets. I'm going to go to my game character, and I'm going to copy this part across. So now my class is going to be called a bullet. It's a sprite class again. In the initiation, what information are we going to need? Size I won't need. Position I will need. I'm not going to use an image for this one. I think that'll be it for what we need there. So we called a constructor on the parent. And then because this is going to be relatively straightforward, and rather than bringing in an image of a red rectangle or something, we're going to create our own one here. So I want to create a surface, and this here is the width and height of the bullet itself. So this might be set wrong, but we'll certainly be able to see it. This will be a bit big to start with, I think, but we can adjust that later on. After that, we're going to fill that then with a color. Have I got in my settings? Okay, I've already got red in here. So if I bring that in from settings, let's bring the settings into here so I can access it. Okay, and then we'll fill that surface with red. After that, we need to get our rectangle, which will allow us to then move the bullet around. And we need to set the starting position for that. So we need to set the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. And this needs to be set to an initial position. So this will be what gets sent when it's created here. Now we're going to pass in this as a tuple. So we want the first one to go here and the second one to go here. Okay, so I'm going to put 0 and 1. So the X coordinate will go to the self.rectx and the Y will go to here. Right, back to the game character. here, rather than printing fire, we're now going to create a bullet. And we're going to need access to that from here. So I'm going to say from bullet, import bullet class. Okay, we're going to create a new bullet here. And if you remember, we've got to send it a position. Okay, we've just got one piece of information that it needs to know. Now, what I'm going to do at the moment, this will need to be adjusted. I'm going to send it the X and Y. Actually, this needs to be sent as a tuple. So we need to put extra brackets around it. So it's going to send the X and Y of the spaceship. Okay, and then we'll create a bullet. Now, if you remember when we added the player back on our main code, this is where we created the game character. And then we had this group, all sprites group, where we add them to the group here. We want to do that on this as well. And I think it makes sense for us to have this as a group in here. So I'm going to take these 2 lines of code and we're going to adjust them here. So this is now going to be self dot, and rather than all sprites, I'm going to call this group bullets, and it's a Pygame sprite group. Now here, rather than adding here, what we do is once we create a bullet, we then add it to that group. Okay. So this group now needs to be updated every time we pass. Every time we update the game character, we also need to update any bullets that it's fired. So we're going to have self.bullets update, okay, which we'll call the update. And then we also need to draw them. Now, the problem we've got here now is if you remember back here, when we draw the game character, we have to tell it where to draw. And in this case, we're now going to need to tell it where to draw, but we don't have access to the screen in this class because the screen exists here. So what we're going to do is we are now going to send the screen via the update here, and we are going to receive it here, so we can then apply this to self.bullets draw, and then send it the screen that it's going to draw to. Okay, let's have a go and see if that's working. Okay, so we got the bullet coming out. That's working nicely. They are too large, so let's go and adjust that to start with. So if we go to our bullet, currently they're 20 by 100. Let's reduce that to 20 and this down to 5 and see what that looks like. Oh, running the wrong project. Okay, so that's looking better. Actually, that's quite good placement in terms of that one to there. So they're coming up on the screen. We now need to add an update method to the bullets themselves. And we're going to adjust the Y coordinate so they go up the screen. We need a speed that we're going to do this by. I'm going to set mine to 5 to begin with. Okay, and then when we update the bullet, we change the Y and we move it up the screen, so we need to take away the speed. Okay. Great. Now, what we can't see here is when the bullet goes off the top of the screen, it actually still continues to exist, and it still continues to move. And we don't really want that to happen. So we've got to look a way of recognizing when the bullet leaves the screen, so we can then destroy the object, so it doesn't keep inside the computer's memory and frees up that space. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to have to look at the coordinate of where the bullet is here. If the rectangle that I know, what I'm going to do, just so we can visually see this, I'm going to say if it becomes less than 100, okay, then we're going to say to kill itself, basically. And this will take it out of the computer's memory. So if we run this and I fire, you'll see it's disappearing once it goes above the 100 pixel mark. Now, that's okay, but we want it to actually disappear when it goes off the screen. So now if I run it again, now you'll notice that it's still disappearing a little early. And it's because it's taking it from the top left-hand corner. So what we actually want to do here is make this a negative number, so it will allow the bullet to leave the screen before it gets destroyed. Actually, that's still... Oh, okay. It's not actually. This is actually working. Let me just show you what's happening here. It's because I've got it as a white background. We don't have black in our settings. We do. Okay, it's because the top bar was white, so you couldn't, it looked like it was disappearing early, but it's not. It's actually going right off the screen before it disappears. Okay, great. So that part of the projectiles working. Now let's assume if that's all you need, you could potentially stop here. But I want to take it a little bit further for the graphic I have, because this has actually got kind of two guns on the spaceship. So what we would do in this case is, this is bullet 1 that gets created and added. But before we do that, we're also going to create a bullet 2. So the only difference with this one is I've got to make an adjustment on the x-axis of the bullet. So I'm going to actually add the width of my character, and in this case I think I set it over here. Yeah, so my spaceship is set to 64 pixels wide, so I'm going to set it to add 64 to it to start with. I think this still might be too far, but let's have a look. Yeah, just a little bit. So I just need to pull that in a little bit. Just a little bit more. I'm actually going to move this across a little bit as well, just so I get that lined up nicely. That's looking pretty good. Okay. Yeah, that's working well. Okay. Obviously, once you've done this, I'd recommend that probably the next tutorial would be collisions, where we can look at making an impact from the bullets with that.